Planning a cruise? There's nothing worse than finding out days before your cruise or even once you're at the cruise port that you're unable to board the cruise for something you never expected. Knowing these things will help you to avoid tears, a ruined vacation, or even be banned for life. Hi there, I'm Ilana from the website lifewellcruise.com. Welcome back to my channel. I've been on over 40 cruises and I've been following the cruise community for years. And I thought I knew all of the reasons that people could be denied boarding, like showing up late to the port, missing key documents, or being sick. But after researching this more and digging deeper, I found real stories of people being denied boarding that were likely kept quiet before. But these are important and they serve as a cautionary tale for all of us. Now, before I get started, I did want to mention that if you like this video, if you find it helpful, informative, or enjoyable in any way, then please do give this video a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Let's get started. All right, let's start off with one that really surprised me and something that this cruise passenger regretted: verbal abuse of cruise line employees. Now, what I'm talking about is a gentleman who received a letter from his cruise line stating that his itinerary had changed. Now, this can actually happen. And, well, what did he do when he got that email? Well, he proceeded to call up the cruise line and get very upset. He wanted compensation. According to the story I read, he wanted compensation and wasn't satisfied with the answers he was getting. Well, he proceeded, by his own admission, to curse and get very upset. And when that cruise line customer service representative asked him to stop, well, he says he escalated even further. Now, the story didn't end there. He thought he'd cool off for the night and call back the next day. But he did receive a phone call from the cruise line. Unfortunately, it wasn't what he wanted to hear, because instead of getting any compensation or anything that he would have been really happy with, his cruise was canceled, his cruise was refunded, and he was banned for life. Now, even though after the fact he wanted to apologize and tried to take steps to resolve it, he was actually going on a cruise with some friends, and unfortunately, that cruise sailed off without him. Now, speaking of things that have to do with the cruise line and getting the resolution that you want, make sure that you stick around to the end, because there is one thing that I've actually seen recommended on different cruise Facebook groups and cruise forums. And this can not only land you in some trouble, but also get you banned from the cruise. Now, something else that can get you denied boarding a cruise is having a criminal record, including a DUI for entry into Canada. Now, some countries don't take DUIs very seriously, but Canada does. So if you're planning on taking an Alaskan cruise or maybe a Hawaii cruise, it may not be obvious, but you really do want to watch this if you or a companion you're traveling with does have a DUI, because there's a good chance that you'll be denied entry into the country if you're flying, and you'll be denied boarding that cruise ship. Now, according to travel agents who book a lot of Alaskan cruises, they say that this comes up a fair amount. And when I did research this topic, I saw that many people were asking about it on forums and on Reddit. A vindictive friend or stranger cancels your reservation. Now, although rare, there have been cases where guests have learned that their cruise was canceled. There was a story who booked a Royal Caribbean cruise planning to go with friends. Unfortunately, they had a little bit of a falling out and everybody knew each other's reservation number. Well, what happened? It turned out that she suspected that her friend or former friend actually canceled her reservation. And unfortunately, once the cruise gets a little bit closer to sailing, it is often sold out and it is very difficult to rectify. Now, unfortunately, this also happened to a woman who booked a suite on a dream cruise. She posted excitedly about it and she shared it on social media, only to find out later that somebody had canceled her booking. And recently, a well-known influencer shared his plane ticket online, only to find out when he got to the ticket counter that, well, a vindictive stranger had canceled his plane ticket. Now, here's some advice, and it may seem obvious, but it is important to mention. Don't share any of your personal information. This includes your full name, your date of birth. Of course, don't share your booking number, but don't even share your cabin number online, on social media, or anywhere else. Unfortunately, there are scammers and bad actors out there. Now, this is where Incogni, the sponsor of our video, comes in. If you've ever booked flights, a cruise, or even just searched around online for travel deals, your personal data is out there. And it's not just sitting around. Unfortunately, it's being bought, sold, and passed around by hundreds of data brokers that you probably have never heard of. Your name, email, phone number, and even your travel patterns are all used without your permission. And with scams increasing this year and getting more sophisticated than ever, it's never been more important to protect your digital privacy. Now, Incogni works by contacting those data broker sites on your behalf and requesting that your personal information be removed. I signed up with Incogni a little over 2 months ago, and already over 100 data broker sites have started to remove my data. Now, it's super easy to sign up. First, you create an account. It actually took me less than 5 minutes. Then you grant Incogni the right to request on your behalf the removal of your data from these sites. And signing up for the annual plan is best, as they can do this proactively each and every month as new data broker sites emerge. Now, I have an awesome 60% off discount code on the annual plan with Incogni, so I will leave the exclusive link as well as the discount code below in the description of this video, as well as a pinned comment. Passport issues that can get you denied boarding. Now, many people are aware that a passport must be valid for at least 6 months after the expiry date from your last day of travel for many countries. If this is new information for you, be sure to check your passport after watching. But did you know that a slightly damaged passport can be a big problem? Yes, a damaged passport can get you denied boarding. Tears, small stains, lifted pages are all reasons for cruise and immigration officials to refuse boarding. In fact, a couple from Britain were denied boarding a Cunard ship in Sydney heading to Singapore because of a slight damage to their passport. Now, this was absolutely awful, as they had already flown to Sydney and handed over their luggage. But unfortunately, this ship was heading to Singapore and the cruise line refused them entry. Real ID and enhanced ID confusion. A Real ID is a new requirement for domestic air travel in the United States. And unfortunately, this has led to some confusion among cruise travelers. Sadly, a Texas family's cruise was ruined when they showed up to the cruise port with what they thought were enhanced IDs and no birth certificate. Now, ultimately, they didn't have the right identification and documentation to board, and they had to watch their ship sail away without them. So what do you need to know? Well, Real ID is not sufficient to board a cruise on its own. And part of the confusion seems to be mixing up the verbiage of Real ID versus enhanced ID, as only 5 states have an enhanced ID driver's license. Now, for a bit of clarification, if a closed loop cruise is leaving from a U.S. port and returning to a U.S. port, in many cases, a birth certificate along with government ID is acceptable. However, passports are still the gold standard, and even the State Department recommends traveling with a passport, even if the cruise line doesn't require it. Now, I am curious, do you travel with a passport? Let me know down in the comments below. New visa requirements. If you're traveling to Europe or abroad this year or next year, there are new visa and documentation requirements. You won't be able to board your flight without an ETA if you are flying into the UK or if you are cruising out of the UK. And next year, the ETIAS or the ETIAS is expected to go into effect. Now, I'm going to go over some important need-to-knows, and then don't worry, I did not forget to let you know about the one thing that is sometimes recommended by people. Very bad idea that can get you not only into trouble, but denied boarding on a future cruise. Traveling with minors without a consent letter. Now, if you're traveling with minors, and in particular, if they are not yours, or if you only have one parent that is there, many cruise lines require you to have a notarized letter signed by the parent or legal guardian. Now, if you check your cruise line's website, you're going to see the information there, and you may see a form to fill out. And of course, if you're working with a travel advisor, they can also help you to know what is required. Banned or prohibited items. Now, I've actually seen some videos where they've shared that if you bring some prohibited items onto the cruise ship, that you can be banned from the cruise. And in most cases, this is not true. And what I'm talking about is there are some common travel items like an iron or a clothing steamer that is just fine to bring on an airplane or to a hotel, but because it's a fire hazard, these are things that are prohibited on cruise ships. So what will happen if you do bring these items is typically they're removed from your luggage and they're returned to you at the end of the cruise. But what I am talking about is prohibited items in terms of substances, as well as weapons and other items that are illegal. Now, what might surprise you is that CBD gummies actually got one woman denied boarding and banned for life on her Miami cruise. Now, as she went to board her cruise, she was going through the embarkation day security line and her carry-on bag was checked. And it turned out that she did have a little bottle of CBD gummies. Now, it may not be common knowledge, but CBD and other substances, and by the way, I use that terminology intentionally because I don't want the distribution of my video to be affected, but I think that you know what I mean. Well, this is actually not permitted on cruise ships, and this has to do with federal law and the fact that when you are sailing to different cruise port destinations or countries, this can be illegal there, even if it is not illegal in the state that you live in or the state where you are boarding. Now, unfortunately, when her gummies were found, because they are not allowed to be brought onto the cruise ship, not only were they confiscated, but she was not able to board, and she has been banned for life from the cruise line. So this is a reminder that cruise ships do have sniffer dogs. They take bringing on illegal substances very seriously, and it is not worth the risk. Now, another reason that people get denied boarding cruise ships is an advanced pregnancy or a pregnancy that is beyond 23 weeks and going into the 24th week. Now, many cruisers aren't aware of the fine print when it comes to the boarding rules. When booking a cruise, it's important to know the rules for pregnancy are different than on flights. Now, unfortunately, a family found out the hard way as the day before their cruise, well, a woman says she started to look through the pre-cruise documentation, just getting ready and excited for her cruise, when she noticed that she could not board the cruise ship if she was already in her 24th week of pregnancy. Unfortunately, she was in her 29th week of pregnancy. She called the cruise line, she said, and she even showed up at the port hoping that maybe there would be a way around this. But unfortunately, not only was she denied boarding, but she also did not get a refund of her cruise. Now, she did end up getting some taxes and port fees back, but that was still a loss, she says, of around $10,000. Missing the hard cutoff on embarkation day. Now, this can surprise a lot of people because sometimes you see that your cruise ship is supposed to sail away at 4 p.m. and maybe boarding starts at 12. So you think you can arrive within any of that window. No, you cannot do this, which is why I always suggest people arrive in the earlier parts of the boarding process. Now, there is a rule that a lot of people aren't aware of where cruise lines will ask their guests to arrive 90 minutes or sometimes 2 hours at the latest before sail away time. Now, this isn't just a private cruise line rule. This is actually federal law that is enforced by U.S. Immigration and Homeland Security. And this is because cruise lines actually have to hand over a manifest 60 minutes before the cruise ship departs. Now, any guests that miss the official cutoff around 90 minutes before sailing, even if it's due to traffic or being late for another reason, unfortunately can and are often denied boarding. All right, now this next one is something that people should never do. However, I do also have a bonus for you if you are wondering if you can be bumped from a cruise ship. Now, a reason you might not suspect that you can be denied boarding is filing a post-cruise credit card dispute or chargeback. Now, cruise lines take unauthorized credit card chargeback seriously, and offenders are put on the no sail list. Now, in some cases, what has happened is that some cruise passengers, if they've been on a cruise and they've been unhappy with something, as an example, they have been unsatisfied with their cruise excursion, is in trying to get some sort of resolution from the cruise line, they decide once they are at home to actually proceed to make a credit card dispute and a chargeback, which may result in them getting a refund from their credit card. However, this does not mean that the cruise line accepts this, and this is still seen as a debt for the cruise line. And what people have found out is that when they went to book another cruise in the future, well, that they still owed that cruise line money, that it actually could go into collections, and beyond that, they have been put on a no sail list and they have now been banned from that cruise line. Now, in an article that I was reading from The Points Guy, they shared a story of a woman who, when unhappy with her Goodwill future credit from the cruise line, she decided to file a credit card dispute for a refund for her cruise. Now, while she did get her refund, she found out later that she was banned from the cruise line and still owed them $3,000. Now, filing credit card disputes when unwarranted is wrong and is considered friendly fraud and is definitely advised not to do. All right, I'm so glad that you stuck around for the bonus, because have you ever wondered if you can arrive at the cruise terminal and find out that you are bumped from the cruise because it is oversold? Now, while this is extremely rare, it did happen a couple of years ago to some people in Brisbane, Australia, when they arrived at the cruise terminal. And by the way, they had booked a guarantee cabin, which means that their cabin was not yet assigned. Well, they arrived at the cruise terminal only to find out that their cruise had been oversold. And while they waited a few hours in case some people didn't show up, because in that case they would be able to board, well, they had their luggage there, everything, and unfortunately, no. Their vacation was not to happen. Now, even though they did get some compensation for that, obviously that doesn't replace the vacation that they had planned. Now, fortunately, this is extremely rare. I think it's actually the only case that I have heard of, but the overselling of cruise ships, that definitely happens. So what happens if your cruise ship is oversold? Well, basically a few days before a cruise, what will happen is the cruise line will usually send out what they call move over notices to various guests on the cruise ship. And in fact, one of my friends told me a story of just a couple of months ago. She got one and it worked in her favor. So what happens is they send this move over notice offering to move you to a different cruise ship, or you can choose the cruise that you want. They may offer some different alternatives. They will give you the same cabin or better. They will refund your entire cruise and give you another free cruise. And in some cases, even offer some additional perks like onboard credit on top of that. So if you're somebody who has some flexibility, this can definitely work in your favor. And I will tell you my friend's little trick. What she did is she went online very quickly. She found another cruise that was leaving the day after her cruise. She was already going to fly out to Florida, so she had the time, and she booked that other cruise, so she was still able to have her vacation. And she did take that move over offer as well, which is resulting in a really nice free sailing. Now I'm going to leave the link as well as the 60% off discount code for Incogni's annual plan down below in the description of this video, as well as a pinned comment. And I would love to hear from you. Have you ever been close to being denied boarding? Are there any things that I have missed? Please do let me know down in the comments below. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Bye for now and happy cruising.